So to give a little bit of background, when I grew up, my parents were not really present for me in many ways. So my dad mostly ignored me, and my mom gave me a lot of attention, but it was more so about like survival. So she'd be like, you got to make sure you're eating enough, you got to make sure you're healthy, you got to make sure you exercise. And I didn't really have conversations with my parents. I don't think they ever asked me like, "Oh, how was your day at school?" or like, "How's it going?" It was either like, "You got to eat your food," or I was ignored, or they would fight a lot too. So sometimes I would get yelled at, or they would just be yelling at each other. And growing up, a typical day at school for me would be like, I go to school, I'd go to track or cross country practice after, and I'd come home and my parents would be fighting. I'd eat dinner by myself. I'd do homework by myself. They're still fighting.
Do you have siblings?
I have an older brother, but he's a lot older. So for the most part, I didn't actually grow up with him. Yeah. So he kind of experienced what I did, but separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty tough. It was lonely, and I had no idea how to socially behave because my parents weren't very social with me. And so as I grew up and went through middle school, high school, definitely felt very awkward and not cool, and just didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. I remember like one time someone was like trying to be my friend and came up to me and talked to me, and the story in my head was, oh, they're just pretending and they're making fun of me because like who would want to hang out with me?
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember like she was upset by that, which makes sense, but I was just in this place where I just couldn't even like accept that.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough that in high school, on my like track and cross country team, there were some friends that I made that were really amazing, and they were kind of the first step into showing me like, oh, this is what good friends look like, and here is what it looks like when people talk to you and care about you. And that was the opening. Again, very thankful for those friends. As I progressed into college, still had some of those friendships, and I'm still friends with those people today. I'm very grateful for them. And while that was helping with me starting to learn some of the ways to behave in a social manner, I was still really much struggling with women and dating. Because believe it or not, when you don't know how to talk to people, it makes dating pretty difficult. So yeah, in high school and college, I didn't date anyone. Not because I didn't want to, but because anyone that I was interested in, they just weren't interested back. They just said they wanted to be friends. And it was very hard for me because I was really into some of these people, and it just like never worked out. And especially progressing towards graduating college, I was like, what's going on? Like, you know, my friends have been dating, and like some of them have successful relationships, but I like still haven't even like gone on a date with like anyone. So after graduating college, I moved out to Madison, Wisconsin for work, and I met a girl there, and we started dating, and that was like, to me, I was head over heels. I was so excited. I was like, I just had to wait long enough. You know, I finally got it made. This is good now.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, unknown to me at the time, like I still had this, you know, all this shit underneath that I hadn't dealt with. And I think that stuff underneath eventually led to the relationship falling apart. I didn't really know why at the time. But you know, it was really heartbreaking. I thought that that was my person. I thought that was like the love of my life, and that I just had to wait long enough, and I had finally found my soulmate. So I was quite devastated when she broke things off. And while that was the most painful thing that I have experienced, it was also probably the best thing to have ever happened to me. Because in that moment, it really forced me to look at myself and say, oh, something is clearly not working here. Previously, I had thought if I'm smart and I get good grades and I'm athletic and fit, then like girls will like me, right? And so I worked really hard to be smart. I worked really hard to be fit. And lo and behold, I was still not successful with women. And so I kind of went off the deep end, just like researching and looking into everything I could find. It was podcasts, it was books, it was online articles. And I started discovering a lot of amazing information that I didn't realize about myself. Ways in which that I was being needy, ways in which that I was not confident, ways that I was like still holding a lot of my trauma and how that was getting in the way of me relating. And it wasn't enough to just read the books. I also had to go out there and like practice these things. And so I started putting myself out there and going on dates and talking to women, and it was really awkward. It was like super, weird and uncomfortable. And I remember just being very embarrassed many times by the way that I was behaving. I was like, that is the opposite of what smooth looks like. But it was really good for me to go through that. And over time, with a lot of repetition, I started learning more about how to connect and how to be social and how to interact with women. And I think more importantly, I was starting to learn that on the inside that things were okay, that I could love myself, that if someone rejected me, that I would be okay, because that happened a lot. I got rejected a lot. And that, in fact, being rejected is actually a very good thing, because it helps with your own growth and learning that you're going to be okay despite it, and also with learning to respect boundaries and to be okay with where people are at. And another thing is that if she rejects me, then it's probably saving us both a lot of time that she told me, as opposed to like things dragging on and getting into a situation that is not good for either of us. So that was really good. And I think also an abundance mindset, just knowing that there's a lot of people out there. If it doesn't work out with one girl, it's not like I lost my soulmate forever. There's like 7-8 billion people in the world. Like, it'll be fine. So I think the internal shift that happened was really powerful, very life-changing for me throughout that journey. And some of these other practices that we've talked about have also helped to back that, whether it's Wim Hof breath work, somatic breath work, also things like yoga or meditation. These practices that really talk about grounding and getting into yourself, being in the present moment, being okay with things as they are. Those were really helpful too in these moments. And so, yeah, that's kind of the summary of the story so far.